morning, or whatever it is where you are. My name is Kurt, and it's Saturday morning here in Huntington Beach, California, which means it's time for another book reading from my book, Going Alone. Let's take a quick look around. Oh, there's a surfer heading out. Cool. He's got one of those boards that's got the little finny things in the back. I was always afraid of those when I was a surfer. I was afraid I would go over the falls and fall on that board and it would poke me. Let's see where he's headed. Oh, he was over there earlier. He's switching places. Let's take a look, shall we? Okay, so he's heading out right there. We're at the edge of 17th Street here. Now it looks pretty flat, but there's actually some pretty good sized sets coming through. Let's see if I can zoom in. He's the only one out there right now, and he's checking out over here. You can see there's a wave kind of peeling. That's where he was just a while ago. And there come a couple of pelicans. I love those little shorebirds running right along the shore. Let's take a bigger look. Oh, I love the way the pelicans soar over the waves there. See that? Okay, there's the Huntington Beach Pier. The sun just coming up. Very nice. Oh, see, that's a nice wave. And there he goes. Well, got a little close up, but those waves are good coming in. He won't be able to get out there in time for that one, but that's a good sized wave. Look at that. That'd be a nice little left and right. Look at that. You could just peel. And then back over this way. Okay, there he is. All right, so I'm right here at the end of 17th Street. If anyone ever wants to come join me here, you just park at the end of 17th Street where it meets Pacific Coast Highway. Come down those stairs right there. And here at sunrise, I'll be here and doing these book readings every Saturday. Okay, let's go ahead and put this down and get started. But I need a little bit of coffee first to really kick things off. Ooh, it is chilly this morning. I mean, chilly by Southern California standards, right? It's kind of a different thing maybe from what others might be familiar with. I guess we could say that we really don't know what cold is here. Let's have a little sip of coffee. Ooh, there's a nice wave. Look at that. I think he's too close in to get it, though. Wow, there's nice peeling sets over there. He's turning. No, not quite. All right. So today I'm going to read from the chapter titled The Writing Bridge. It's not a very long chapter. It's the third chapter in Going Alone. And it deals with the place where I wrote a good deal of the book. A lot of the book was written on the move, here and there, all over the place, while adventuring, sometimes while just walking, sometimes while thinking, sometimes out in the wilderness. Those are the bits in italics in the book. The parts that are not italics, I either wrote under the bridge or in some cases at home and in a few cases in Japan. But this particular chapter, The Writing Bridge, I actually wrote at home because I needed something to describe the the place and the circumstance where I wrote most of the book, where I put it all together. So let's go ahead and get into it. Oh, I see a comment. Scooch you a little forward. What was that? Got it. Says, good morning, Kurt. It's very cold there here in the UK. Must say hello. The beach looks appealing. Oh, hello. Who is that? Oh, 780. No, thank you very much. Yeah, it's chilly. I mean, it's not so cold that you can't get in the water. Later today, I'll come back here and jump in, but not this morning. Okay. So, with no further ado, let's go ahead and read the writing bridge. And I've got sand all over in the book. Third chapter of the book. Here we go. Okay, this particular chapter has an illustration that was done by my daughter Emily. You can see right there. That is the writing bridge right there in Siberia. That's me sitting on my chair just outside of it. Now, interesting, my nephew Parker and I actually went here last Saturday, today, a week ago, to retrieve that chair because my work at Siberia is largely complete. So I really don't want to leave any litter behind. So we picked up the chair, and we also got the chalk that I had left under the bridge, and Parker left his mark. So there we go, in chalk. So as ephemeral as everything, right? Especially as us. Okay, so there's a quote here as well in the beginning. So here we go. The writing bridge, where I wrote the story. And here's the quote. We must go alone. I like the silent church before the service begins better than any preaching. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now, an interesting quote from a man who allegedly, as the story goes, who was a preacher. I think he was an Episcopal preacher, perhaps, who had his collar. I think it was, maybe I'm wrong about the type of preacher he was, but he had his collar and went for a walk in the woods one day and took his collar off and hung it on the hook. And after he came back from his meditative walk in the woods, he never replaced his collar again. Very symbolic, I think, of, does it mean he gave up God? Gave up on the concept of God? I don't necessarily think so. I think a man of his time, mid-19th century, I don't think there were a lot of other options on the table besides deism, perhaps, if not an outright theist. But I don't know. I'd always be interested in that. And apparently his collar remains on that hook to this day. Again with a quote. We must go alone. I like the silent church before the service begins better than any preaching. Ralph Waldo Emerson. And how much more so the silent woods, I would imagine. Siberia Ghost Town in the East Mojave Desert is flanked on the north by the BNSF railroad line, which runs east and west through a great expanse of otherwise quite empty desert. On the other side of the ghost town, running parallel to the railroad, is Route 66, or the Mother Road, as it is sometimes called. Both corridors of traffic, rail and road, have existed here in various forms of improvement for more than 100 years. I first found Siberia Ghost Town after spotting from the road the lone standing stone wall which now serves as the center of the empty community which once was. I noted the wall while driving eastbound on Route 66, probably just as I was driving over the bridge which would later factor so significantly in the tale of the writing of this book. I certainly did not notice the bridge when I passed over it that first day back in 2015. I was simply exploring the East Mojave by car, moving slowly along Route 66, checking the road on either side for anything of interest for potential exploration. In fact, I wasn't looking for anything near the highway in particular, as I wasn't much interested in anything too close to the civilizing touch of either the highway or the railroad. and I was instead searching for good places where I could safely park my car some distance away from the road while I went for a long desert hike. So, when I saw the ruins of Siberia, I wasn't drawn to these for their own sake, but instead to the fact of a relatively well-maintained, short dirt road which left the highway leading to what appeared to be the ruins of a very old building. "That'll do," I probably said as I flicked on the left turn signal and made my way carefully off the Route 66 asphalt and onto the dusty road. Now, that first time I visited Siberia, I wasn't on my motorcycle. I was using my little red car. The motorcycle would add a different feel and flavor to the experience when those days came. The distance from the highway to the ruins is about the length of a football field. Not far at all. And the dirt road is in good shape, seemingly well-traveled and well-maintained. I would later learn that this was due to the ongoing attention of the railroad workers. And here's a footnote to number 5. Let's go take a look in the appendix. What does number 5 say regarding the railroad workers? Number 5 back in the appendix says, Henry David Thoreau also had a railroad and railroad workers to reflect on during his time in the woods. He uses their example and industry in providing commentary on our curious self-domestication. From the first chapter of Walden, and here's a quote from Walden. "We do not ride on the railroad. It rides upon us. Did you ever think what those sleepers are that underlie the railroad?" The sleepers, of course, being the wooden ties, right? "Each one is a man, an Irishman or a Yankee man. The rails are laid on them, and they are covered with sand, and the cars run smoothly over them. They are sound sleepers, I assure you. And every few years a new lot is laid down and run over, so that if some have the pleasure of riding on a rail, others have the misfortune to be ridden upon. And when they run over a man that is walking in his sleep, a supernumerary sleeper in the wrong position, and wake him up, they suddenly stop the cars and make a huge cry about it, as if this were an exception. I am glad to know that it takes a gang of men for every 5 miles to keep the sleepers down and level in their beds, as it is, for this is a sign that they may sometime get up again." What an interesting reflection on the way that we spend our lives in supplication to the system, to the machine, becoming sleepers, as Thoreau describes in the railroad, and the outcry that comes when someone that is not in their position. How does it describe? The man that was run over by the train, he's trying to make the distinction from that, the ones that sacrifice, that lay down their lives for the support of the train, and his wish that they may one day wake up. So I find it interesting that, being a huge fan of Thoreau, that I wound up in the writing of my own book to have my own railroad to refer to. Carrying on. I'll start for that sentence again. I would later learn that this was due to the ongoing attention of the railroad workers, trackmen, signalmen, linemen, railroad police, and others who make their living keeping this stretch of railroad in safe operational order. I would later come to know some of these men, swell guys, honest, hard-working men, people I respect. And I always strive to stay out of their way when I'm at Siberia, and never allow myself to become a nuisance to their hard, honest labor. In fact, I have found labor here too, of a sort. Though I am never paid for my efforts, Siberia has become a quite effective work site and source of inspiration for me for both my writing and my videos, as well as my every effort of improved living. The ghost town, and in particular the bridge under the highway near the town, are where my desert muse does seem to live and reside. Live, despite the fact my muse is quite dead and non-existent. A figment of my imagination. Alive, in a sense, only as long as I live, and have the will and the way and the motive force to breathe life into something only my own musings might create. My muse did find me here in the desert, in the ghost town of Siberia. She did then follow me far out into the desert, where she mostly shadowed my movements. nearly always silent, refusing to speak to me among the holy relics of the dead mountains and forgotten wastes of a landscape that never cared and never lived and never knew or loved or possessed any dear sentiment, thought, or capability which our species might attribute to life. My muse was my unloving, unfeeling, unthinking, and unliving imagined escort through a place where I could never pass without her attentive ministrations and silent, whispered hints of something more to be found beyond my adventures and excursions, something to be found in the place I'd left behind, in a place I must love, should love ever be anything to dissuade the emptiness it was then too late to unsee or forget. My muse is my desert voice, a silent soliloquy and homage to what I can never truly know or share or escape from. My muse resides and originates from under that desert bridge. It's funny how the muse is still available to me now, coming in little bits in the morning and the afternoon when I make my videos, and I attempt to add a little bit of textual element to it, but not quite like the ferocity and the assertiveness with which she spoke when I was young, and particularly when I was out in the desert. Yeah, my younger muse spoke with something different, but that's for another story. So what part of this bridge? So what part of the bridge at Siberia? So what part does the bridge at Siberia play in all this? Was there some poetry to be found beneath the girders and beams holding up the highway? Did the muse follow me from somewhere else in the desert, or Japan, to that place in the shade beneath the road? Does my muse live there still while I am away? Can the muse be found there after I am gone, or if someone ever came with me to the desert? Why the bridge? What role does this place play in the story? Shade and shelter are the answers. A refuge from the heat and fury of the desert summer. I came to the bridge out of necessity, and then discovered a place of catalyst for what I might immodestly call my art. The first time I went to the bridge, I did so simply to get out of the sun and escape the heat. The heat, so impossibly intense there in the deep East Mojave during summer. There is truly no rest from the blaze in the open desert. The sunlight out there can surely kill. So much energy piling on across whatever skin is exposed. A real threat, nothing to take lightly. So, on a very hot July day in 2016, I decided to pack some water and a few necessities and hike the quarter-mile to the nearest of the two bridges which I could see supporting Route 66 to the east and west of Siberia, where a flash flood arroyo crossed under the road. The first time I did this, I went to the bridge to the east of Siberia. It is a good bridge, and I found some interesting things below it, including a travel book written in Japanese with a hand-penned note, again in Japanese, on the back. The note was written by a man who declared that he would not die away from home and that he would make it back alive. I went back to that bridge again a few months later. The Japanese book was still there. The shade was good there. It was a fine place to rest and find shelter. The bridge served well the important purpose I was then after. It was not until a year later before I tried that other bridge, the bridge to the west. I decided to visit that other bridge when I realized the western bridge was closer to the Siberia ruins than the eastern bridge. The fact of being close was good, as it allowed me to keep better eye on my motorcycle parked back at the ghost town ruins, which I periodically check on by popping my head out from under the bridge to make sure nobody is loading my bike onto a truck or setting a match to the gas tank to create a desert bonfire. There was also something good about the space below the western bridge, though there is not much headroom down there. But there is also something more. The sand is very soft and good for sitting. It is a good place to plop down and think, and that is how the writing got started. Just sitting on the soft sand below the bridge, with the sun roasting the desert beyond my shade, and the sound of periodic automobiles crossing fast overhead, and the frequent rumble and growl of mile-long freight trains moving by slowly a quarter mile to the north. This setting under the western Route 66 bridge became my place at Siberia Ghost Town, a sort of circumstance and atmosphere where I could cultivate and get to know better the muse I'd met earlier out there at the edge of the blank desert wilderness. A dead muse who seemed willing to and able to follow me sometimes to the places where I go, and where I am willing and able to think without much distraction I cannot willingly ignore, to think where the conversations of my kind and the ways of our collective consensus appear as weak sentiments easily put aside in favor of whatever else can be proven more sound and compelling. This is the bridge where I wrote much of the content found within Going Alone, especially the content under the heading Notes from My Muse. This is the bridge where I discovered the solution of developing a life of meaning in the face of a universe which seems so far devoid of intrinsic meaning or purpose beyond the mute scope of survival and the worthy act of passing our life from ourselves into those who will soon take our place. This is the home of my desert muse, and the place where I found the words of the story I do now choose to tell. And that's the conclusion of the chapter, The Writing Bridge, a very short chapter that is set right between the chapter titled The Cast, where I introduce all the characters and place names that I'll be talking about in the book, and then the next chapter, which is, let's see, the next chapter we jump right in. Oh, my muse is a corpse, right? With this chapter coming up, but for next week, we'll see just how crazy the muse can be. Robert says, "Good morning, Kurt. Thank you for reading out loud." You're welcome, Robert. Good to see you. Well, the sun is up in earnest now. The surfer seems to be gone. Oh, there he is. He moved over there. There's a couple of pelicans over there. There's some real powerful waves over there. Let's take a look. There's the beach facing back towards the pier. Okay, there we go. Let's see if we can see some of these nice waves. Oh, look at the pelicans ripping across right above the waves. There's the surfer. Lone surfer. Come on, Kurt, hold it steady. Stand up. Oh, there's a nice shot of the pier, huh? And the sunrise over the pier. That's lovely. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. I think we can probably call it quits for today. Thank you for joining me. And remember, be safe, but not too safe. Get back out again next Saturday. Take care.